Right guys, so today I want to demonstrate how to override the default Bricks animations using only Bricks Builder. So no add-ons, no plugins, no child theme code, just the editor in Bricks. I did a video a couple of months ago showing how to override the animations. I was using WP Codebox as an external code manager. Some of the comments I get is, how do we do this if we don't have any of those plugins? And Bricks is a awesome platform. There's lots that you can do without plugins. So I want to show you how to do that. There are a few little limitations, but I think in most cases this will work for you. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a section. And in that section, I'm going to add a rich text box. And I'm going to grab some lorem ipsum text. I use this lovely Bob Ross lorem ipsum generator, which is fantastic. Copy that text. Paste it in there. And that just gives us something to scroll. I'm going to duplicate that now. And I'm going to add a block. This is going to be a grid for us to use. I'm not going to use any frameworks. Here I say there's no plugins, nothing. So I'm just going to use raw values here to demonstrate the idea. I'm then going to add two images. I'm so used to using Advanced Thema that, excuse me, still got a cold here. Advanced Thema that I do get a little bit slow using Bricks without it. So here's an image here. I'm going to grab that image, select an image. On the other image, I'm just going to select a different image. It's going to be that one there. I'm going to turn this into a grid. She's a 3 rem gap, and I'll just do 1FR, 1FR. Now, I'd never actually do this on a live site. I'd normally use a framework and define these a little bit more clearly. But for this case, I just want to demonstrate without using anything. So here we go. We've got a basic setup now where we've got some text at the bottom, two images in a grid, and some text at text at the top, two images in a grid, and then text at the bottom. I'm just going to preview this on the front end. There we go. So if I scroll, there's my images and there's my copy down the bottom. All right. So let's add some animation to these. So the standard Bricks animations, you do that using the interactions, add an interaction, and we want to do a viewport. So enter viewport, we want to start an animation, and I'm going to select a slide in from the left for that one. And on the right hand side one, I'm going to select a same thing, enter viewport, start animation. I'm going to slide in from the left. And let's have a look at what they actually look like. Look at that. Oh, I did both the same. So let's go back to that one. I want to slide in from the right. Look at that. That is a typical standard animation. To me, I don't like it. I am one of those people who just like very subtle animation, if any at all. So this to me looks too common. I see this in Divi and Elementor and Bricks, and you end up with all these sliding and rotating animations, and it just looks ridiculous. So what I'm going to show you is how to tame that down to what you want it to be. And a couple of points here with I wish the Bricks team would do, and hopefully I'll actually raise this with them, and hopefully they'll actually put some thought into this. A couple of things here is with the animations. There's very limited settings here. You choose an animation, duration and delay, target, what do you want to animate, and run once. If you hit that, then it only animates the first time it enters the viewport and stays in. If you have it in its default state, it animates every time it enters the viewport. What it doesn't have is a threshold. So with a intersection observer, you get to specify a threshold from the side. Say, for example, the top and the bottom. You can specify a number of pixels or a percentage, and the element is not considered to be inside the viewport until it is within that pixels or percentage from the top or the bottom. So you can choose when the animation starts. With bricks, as soon as any part of the element is visible in the viewport, it starts animating. So there we go. So really, if you got it like this, and if someone scrolls like that, that looks okay. If they scroll a little bit, it's animating now before you actually scroll up. So that'd be a nice thing to have, just a threshold from the top and the bottom for your viewport animations. Anyway, that's a side note. So that's the standard animations. Let's say we want to change the way these work. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the first animation. I'm going to change that to be 30 seconds. And don't forget to put the S or MS or whatever in the end, otherwise it doesn't work. You got to put the correct units in. If I just put 30 there, it interprets that as nothing, 0. Okay, so you put the 30S for 30 seconds. Save that. Have a look at the screen here, and you can see the left-hand one is taking 30 seconds to animate now, which gives us time to inspect the element, and we can see that it's got bricks animated and bricks animate slide and left, which is the one we chose. So these are the two classes that we actually need for our overrides. I'm going to grab a copy of those. Come back to our builder, change that back to the default. Just by deleting it goes back to 1 second. And now to override these animations, we need to create a wrapper around the elements that we want to have custom animation. So I'm going to go to the section. I'm going to call this animation overrides. Okay, on my animation overrides in my CSS, I'm going to go for my root. This is where I really miss Advanced Seamer. A lot of shortcuts in here which make this much quicker for slow typists like myself. And what we're going to do is just take out the space and add dots here. So when you see classes in a HTML and it doesn't have the dot there and there's a space between them and they're on the same element, to target those with CSS you need the dots, you need to remove the space, which means they're both on the same element. Okay, so what we're going to do is when we've got bricks animated and we've got the animate class on, so I should actually iterate here. So what bricks does is it adds, when you're animating something, it adds the BRX animated straight away. It adds the animation class to animate, and then it removes it when it's finished animating. So that's how that works. So what we're going to do is we want to specify what keyframes we want to use. So we need to specify the animation name. And we're going to call this, I'm going to prefix it so we don't clash with anything that Bricks has done. I'm going to call this WPE slide and left. Copy that entire name, and that's going to be our keyframes. Keyframes. Okay, so we've specified the animation name as WPE slide and left. We created some keyframes for WPE slide and left. So at 0%, and then at 100%. What do we want to happen? We want to transform. We want to translate X from the left of minus, say, 30 pixels. Okay, and then we want to set the transform to none at 100%. Right, so that's an override there. Let's see what happened there. Okay, so there we go. So now we see the left-hand one is when we come in, it's only sliding in by 30 pixels. All right. So now we've overridden it. It's as simple as that. We've just created a wrapper class around the elements that we want to animate with our custom animations. We've given them a new keyframe and keyframe's name, and then we've specified a different animation. Next thing I'm going to do here though is I'm going to create a variable for this 30 pixels so that we can use that across all of our animations and keep it consistent, which I'll show you the importance of that shortly. Let's call that transform distance. Okay, so transform distance of 30 pixels. Now we want this to be minus 30 pixels, so we need to do a calc of -1 times the var of transform distance. And let's just make sure that still works. No, it didn't. Why didn't it work? What did I mess up? There we go. It's still working there. Now, the reason I did that is we're also going to do the right-hand side one, and we want it to be exactly the same amount. So let's do the right. So I'm just going to copy that there. And I'm going to call that right. Slide and right, slide and right. And in this case, we just want it to be the var without the calc, because it's going to be 30 pixels from the right. Slave is that. Oh, no, I didn't update that bit. Okay, there we go. So we've just overridden those, so they're nice and subtle, 30 pixels. Now, because we've made this a variable, we can make that small. We can make that, say, 10 pixels. All right. It's even more subtle now, right? Just a slight bit of animation. I'm going to put it back to 30 because I'm going to show you some additional things we can do with this. So it's like 30 pixel animation. There we go. All right. Now let's say we want it to fade in as well with that animation. What we can do from there is set our opacity to 0. Let's go with the first one. Oops. Wish this would actually expand a little bit more, but it doesn't. So I can't tell. Have I got? I have. It's just wrapping around. So I'm going to go opacity of 0 and opacity of 1. 1. See what that does. There you go. So we can see the left-hand one, the opacity is changing as well as it comes in. If we want the opacity to come in quicker, we could actually just set that to, let's say, at, say, 60%. And move our opacity to there. Yeah, the opacity comes in a little bit quicker. If that's what you want, that's fine. All right, so we can do a lot with this here. We can now, even though we're using the slide and left name, and unfortunately we can't put in our own unique names because we're using the slide and left, it kind of gets a little bit ambiguous now if we add additional things to it. So I would say if you're going to use this as your standard transition, it makes sense. But then you just need to remember and maybe even make a note in the CSS here as to why you've done that. Okay, let's have a look at making this even cooler. So we're going to add some 3D animation to this. And to do that, firstly of all, I'm going to add a couple of divs here. And I'm going to put my images inside the divs. Okay, and on that first div, I'm going to create a thing called a perspective wrapper. Okay, and in my custom CSS, I've already got it there. I'm going to create on my root a perspective of, so I've got 600 pixels here. Okay, you can make that whatever you like, and that's basically saying how far the perspective camera is away from the canvas for a 3D rotation. Okay, you can, and the further it is away, the less 3D effect you have. The closer it is, the more 3D effect you have, pretty much. So I'm going to leave that at 600. I'm going to put my perspective wrapper onto that one as well. So both of these got a perspective wrapper, which at the moment makes no difference. Okay, they both animate the same way. If I just mess that up, the left. Ah, I think I put these images in around the wrong way when I was playing with that. Okay, let's put that back as it was. There we go. So now we have them animating from the right sides. All right, so what else can we do? Let's add this perspective wrapper here. Now we've got a perspective wrapper, we can rotate these images in a 3D way. So how are we going to do that? Let's go back to our overrides, and let's say for our slide and left, we want to at 100%, so at 0%, our transform, let's rotate Y of say 15 degrees. Oops. And for the at 100%, rotate Y. Actually, just leave that to none. We just leave that on none. It should automatically go back to there. Okay, so that's on the left-hand side. Let's have a look what that does. See that? We've got a 3D rotation on the left-hand side. And let's do the same on the right. Make that minus 15 so it goes in the opposite direction. There we go. Maybe that's too much for you, so let's just make that. We can do this a couple of ways. One is we can put less rotation on it, or on our perspective wrapper, we can set that to a higher number. Let's say set that to 800 pixels, and let's see what that looks like. A little bit less. Maybe we'll set it to 1000 pixels. Yeah, just a little bit less. So you got to decide on what that perspective wrapper will be for what you want. So by doing this, all we're doing is overriding the what keyframes are being applied for that slide-in effect, and that's it, all done within Bricks. Now, all of the other settings. So, for example, if we go to this image here, go to the interactions and the viewport, all these other settings still apply. So we can change the duration, we can change the delay. For example, if I put a 0.3 second delay on that second image, let's have a look what happens now. There we go. We haven't done our opacity on that second one, have we? Let's have a look at the second one. No, we didn't. Okay, let's go, and so on our slide and right, and then we'll do that at 60% as well. We'll go to opacity 1. Okay, there we go. Maybe that's too much. So we'll go back to our second image and change that to 0.1 seconds. So it's just a slight delay, just to give you a little bit of effect. No, it's not enough. Maybe 0.2. There we go. There we go. So it's pretty cool. Like, you can tame these animations, you can make them do whatever you want, and do it all from within Bricks with no plugins, no external code, nothing whatsoever. It's all doable from within Bricks. Now, the thing to remember though is that for Bricks to output the CSS for this animation overrides, the class has to be on an element above that DOM. So for example, if I took that off, take that class off there, come back to my animations, I'm going to be back to didn't take it off. There's the default bricks animations. Right? If I go to this container here and I put the animations overrides on that container, right? We then have the animations, the overrides. If I duplicate that container and I take the overrides off that container, we have on the top container, we have our overrides. On the bottom container, we don't have our overrides. That's the default bricks. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope that makes sense. There's a lot to go through, but it is pretty simple once you understand how to define where those, or how to find the actual animation classes that get applied, and then override them very simply by using these simple overrides. So remember, just use your root, which is your animation overrides. Anything underneath that element or deeper than that element that has the bricks animation classes, you can specify a new set of keyframes for that, and that'll override the default bricks keyframes. And that's it. Hopefully that makes sense and is something that you can use. Thanks, guys.